the color of the occupants of the car. Now, I hate to be too much of a cynic here, but the plaintiff's name here, let me just make sure I get it, is Tyrone Lamont Dobson. Okay, and if I had to hazard a guess, he was not Scots-Irish, probably not a redneck. Okay, so what happened? The cops pull this car over, 4 people in it. They suspect the gun's in there, and it turns out the driver of the car, a female, was a parole and probation officer who had a license to carry a gun. Okay, but as this was unfolding, apparently one of the cops said, "Oh, I smelled pot in the car, or smelled weed," or I think they used the term marijuana. Okay, this is where things begin to get really sort of stupid. Because North Carolina has legalized hemp, smokable hemp. And the human nose is incapable of detecting hemp versus higher THC strains of marijuana. Can't do it. Okay. So when this case was charged, and I'm assuming that they found weed in the car, this Tyrone pled guilty of eventually to cannabis charges. So I assume they found weed in the car. Okay, so one of the officers allegedly said, "I smell weed," and somebody else said, "Well, I smell cologne." Okay, so they went ahead and searched the car, found apparently some weed, and this guy got charged. Well, after he was charged, they moved to suppress all evidence from the search because it was unconstitutional, it was warrantless, and that's sort of where the pissing match began. Now, back in after Prop 64, when cannabis was legalized in California, there were a couple of cases that blew the probable cause out the window for smelling pot and being able to do an unwarranted search. One of them, I think, was an apartment. Some cop said he smelled weed coming from a window, did a warrantless search, and, of course, weed's legal, and it was all thrown out because it was a warrantless search. We also had dogs hitting on cars, and they were trained to smell weed. Okay? They also were trained to smell other drugs, but if they were trained to smell weed, you challenge it as an unconstitutional search because dogs can't tell the difference between legal and illegal weed, hemp and higher THC strains. They can't do it. So North Carolina was faced with this. They challenged this. In trial level, the trial court said, "Nah, I'm going to allow the search under exigent circumstances." They smelled weed, and cologne can mask evidence of something other than just weed. So this went to the appellate court, and an appellate panel of 3 judges from the appellate court ruled that the smell of weed was justification to search the car. And there was other things they threw in, but primarily it was the circumstances of probable cause was they smelled weed, and cologne can be used to mask the smell of weed. So that's where the appellate court decided, and what this defendant has done is asked for the entire in-bank Court of Appeals to take a look at this and decide, okay, is the smell of weed when smokable hemp is legal, probable cause to warrant an unwarranted search of that vehicle? That's been handled in California, and the answer is no, okay? Other states are beginning to look at this now because law enforcement loved weed cases because it's low-hanging fruit. If you smell weed, man, you could roll in, boom, I'm popping you anything in plain view as I'm doing a search. We're going to bust you on everything. And the courts across the country are going to have to look at this and decide. First of all, if you do a search without a warrant, it's presumed unconstitutional. Okay, that's where we start from. The exigent circumstances of being in a vehicle have changed it a little bit, but then, okay, you're in a vehicle, they could drive away if you don't, move forward on a search. What's the probable cause needed to search that vehicle? Okay, and if the smell of weed, it's legal, okay, now how are you going to parse this one out? So I would hope that either the Court of Appeals here in Bank or the Supreme Court of North Carolina takes a look at this and says, no. It's presumed to be an unconstitutional search unless you can show us you have reasonable probable cause. And the smell of weed anymore is just not that. Okay? So that's basically a starting point for me to discuss across the entire country. How do you handle this when dogs can't tell, when humans can't tell, and you want to use the smell of weed as probable cause to go do an unwarranted search? I'm going to throw it back at you. What do you guys all think? Because this football is going to be kicked a lot as cannabis is legalized across the country.
Mm-hmm. That is for sure, Dale, without a doubt. Oh, go ahead, Mandy.
I was just going to say, a lot of states are, well, not a lot, a few states are starting to take a stand on this, right? In California, and I think, I don't know if it's Nevada, I can't remember what other state has recently passed something on this where probable cause does not include
the
odor,
smell of cannabis.
right?
Yes, you're right.
Yeah, the smell of cannabis. And also, not to sound lame and come up with some whack-ass excuse or whatever, but if you do a quick Google search, there is an endless supply of cannabis, cologne, and perfume you can buy online right now. It's based upon terpenes. There is no psychoactivity to it. It is just to smell like your favorite strain. Mm-hmm. And so, this is very easy to argue, I think, all day long, and whoever is leading the charge on this defense needs to be tapping into the legislation in California and what helped lawmakers decide that probable cause should not include odor.